Hello, everyone. Well, because Zoom meetings always have a long, slow trickle in process, um, I decided to get things started with the first part of our free write. So as we're all coming in and getting settled, I want to invite you all to grab a notebook or a piece of paper, or a few pieces of paper, or if necessary, a digital doc like a Word doc or a Google Doc. But I recommend a piece of physical paper and a pen or pencil, and start jotting down all of the types of writing you do in your life and work, and really be as inclusive as possible in that list, including emails, grocery lists, personal journals, grant proposals, articles, love letters, books, post-it reminders, you name it. We'll spend a few minutes doing that as we wait for everyone to arrive. Hannah, are you willing to put a link to the script in the chat as well?
Yes, of course.
Thanks.
Just give me a second. I will do that. All right.
So once again, welcome. We decided to jump right into a free writing exercise since it takes a while for people to arrive. So as you're arriving and getting settled, I invite you to find a notebook or some pieces of paper and start jotting down a list of all the kinds of writing you do in your life and work. And define writing as capaciously as you can. This includes everything from emails to grocery lists to grant proposals to love letters, you name it. And if you've got a mostly complete list, you can start rearranging them or ranking them in order of easiest to most challenging or most to least enjoyable. Is there a question, Anne?
Yeah, so hi, good morning. Thanks for doing this. When you say most challenging, are you saying the most challenging to find time to do it, or the most challenging to do the activity itself?
This is a very loose and open activity, so I'll let you define that however you like.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And the script was dropped in the chat for anyone who is wanting access to it.
Thank you. Okay, I see numbers are still increasing for attendees, so I'll say the prompt one more time in just a moment. So once again, people are slowly arriving, so I'm inviting folks who are here to get started with a free write, part one. Find some paper or a notebook and start jotting down a list of all the kinds of writing you do in your life and your work. Defining writing as inclusively as possible. And we'll do this for just a couple more minutes and then get started. If you've got a complete list, you can start rearranging or ranking your writing tasks in order of easiest to most challenging or most to least enjoyable. And I recommend having plenty of paper and pen available for as we continue with our exercise. Okay, well, I think I will invite you to just kind of find your way to a stopping point for now. This is part of a larger exercise that we will keep coming back to over the course of the next hour. And we will spend several minutes on it at a time at 3 more stages throughout the presentation. So I really encourage you all to just give yourself over to it. Challenge yourself not to just go check your email while we're doing the free write if you can. And I also want to quickly, before I turn it over to Hannah, just want to give a shout out to my colleagues at UW Bothell, who published a wonderful outcome of a creative pedagogies project, which includes this river of writing exercise, which was in turn inspired from another website. And both of those are cited in my works cited at the end of this presentation. So I wanted to just give credit where it is due. And for now, I will turn it over to Hannah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on Writing for Wellness with Megan Callow. Megan is an associate teaching professor of English and director of writing at UW. And this webinar will dive into expressive writing for stress relief and productivity. As always, this session is being recorded and will be sent out along with the slides. The slides can be sent out directly after this, but the recording will take about a week. And there will be time for Q&A throughout the session. We are encouraging people to utilize the chat. So thank you again, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Megan. We're so excited to have you here, and take it away.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you so much for the intro and for the invitation to be here today. So hello, everyone. As Hannah said, my name is Megan Callow, and I'm an associate teaching professor here in the English department at UW Seattle. And I'm also currently the inaugural director of writing for the Seattle campus. And I want to tell you a few things about what this session is and what it is not. So what we will be doing in this session is thinking about what is expressive writing. We'll define it and I'll share some examples. I'm going to share some of the research on the benefits of expressive writing. And throughout this process, I'm gonna help us start defining and redefining our own identities as writers. And in so doing, we will practice some guided expressive writing. And I'll give you just a few ideas for prompts for expressive writing that you can do on your own. And as I was trying to think of a photo of myself to include, I decided to include this photo of me having just completed my dissertation, which was the biggest writing project of my life, before or since. And as you can see, there were a lot of emotions involved in that, in that writing project. I'm sure many of you can relate. But I also want to add what this presentation is not. So this is not a writing class. I will not be teaching you tips and tricks about how to write clearer sentences or how to edit or how to be more concise or craft stronger arguments. What I'm actually more interested in doing today is helping you recognize some of the aspects of your writing identity that might be holding you up, and also persuading you that doing certain kinds of expressive writing can contribute to a more liberated writing practice, as well as a healthier and more grounded life. So I teach academic writing, mostly science writing, to undergrads. And I also support faculty who teach writing in their own disciplines. In my research, I look at the ways that people's histories and their disciplinary affiliations and beliefs about education shape the ways that they teach writing to undergrads. But what I have been noticing over the years is just how much these variables shape not only how people teach writing, but also the ways they perceive themselves as writers. The other thing I've noticed in my teaching and research is that many of us have really complicated and sometimes emotional relationships to writing, especially the kind of writing that I call high stakes writing. These are the kinds of writing that our livelihoods can depend on or that are subject to deadlines. But really, there doesn't have to be a lot writing on it for our writing to trigger complicated feelings. Sometimes even the prospect of emailing a friend can trigger some anxiety. Oftentimes, we don't recognize consciously why or what in our histories has prompted these complicated feelings. I have a close friend who has always dreaded and feared writing so much that it has really interfered with her own self-worth. Recently, she told me about an experience she had in college where, after turning in a paper in one of her classes, the professor accused her of plagiarizing somebody else's work. My friend was bewildered by the accusation and just absolutely mortified by it. And decades later, she still carries around with her this deeply imprinted identity that she is a bad writer. Sometimes it's a specific life event that can affect us like this, and sometimes it's just a lifelong buildup of this like deep-seated suspicion that writing cannot possibly be this hard for everyone else as it is for us. I do want to add that writing can bring up some really positive emotions for people too. It can be liberating and even a joyful experience for some. But so I don't want to exclude that reality, but I will say that as a college writing teacher, the negative emotions really do tend to outweigh the positive ones. So I'd like to pause here and ask you to check in with yourself. What emotions does writing bring up for you? I'll ask you to just sit and close your eyes for a second if you like. Imagine yourself sitting down, getting ready to compose one of the things that you most often have to write in your life and work. What comes up for you? Think of a word or two that describes the feeling or the sensation that arises when you imagine yourself writing. There are no wrong answers here. When you've captured that feeling in a word, drop it in the chat and let's see what kind of range of experiences people have. Okay, I see chats are flying here. Oh my gosh, they're going so fast I can't even read them. Anxiety, peace, stress, excitement, focus, fear, inertia, stress, nervous, stream of consciousness, aversion, BS. Okay, I caught that one. Intention and excitement, therapy, easy. Whoever said easy, lucky you. Fear of retribution. Oh my gosh. Overwhelmed, struggle, stuck, annoyance, terror, wisdom, pressure, anxiety, failure, resignation, vulnerability, worry of judgment, relief, stress, get it right, clarity, motivational. Oh my gosh, I could not even have imagined what a huge range this was going to be. Bored, inspiration, procrastination, never ending, never done. This would be a great word cloud. I agree. Not good enough, distractions, creativity, repetitive. It would be a great word cloud, except there's so many words, it would just be, a whole screen filled with words. judgment, carpe diem. Okay, I couldn't read all of them. I'm sorry, they flew by so fast, but thank you for participating. The intensity of the response was even greater than I had anticipated. Um, so let's talk about expressive writing. I'm going to move my little chat window out of the way here. Clearly, we all have very complicated writing identities. Um, Add on to that these ongoing crises of contemporary life, including, just to name a couple, a global pandemic and national politics that can be particularly stressful for many of us. I think I am probably not alone when I say that I myself have been walking around for the last 5 years or more with some level of anxiety, ranging from kind of low grade to just full blown, depending on what is going on. But what if writing was not one of the many things that falls under this header of stressor? Um, what if there were ways to marshal writing as a way to not only foster a healthier relationship to the writing that we must do, but also to help alleviate general stress? Enter expressive writing. Expressive writing is defined in many different ways by many different people, but some of the ways it is most commonly described is that it is writing about personal experiences or emotions. It's also described as writing that is contemplative or practices mindfulness. My favorite definition that I've come across is that expressive writing is writing with nothing extra. It has no intended audience but yourself. It has no purpose but its own doing. An obvious example of expressive writing is personal journaling. That's something that often comes to mind, but we'll come back to several more examples in just a little bit. For now, let's come back to this free write activity that we began at the top of the hour. So for part two, this is a bit of a two-parter actually. The first part is a writing exercise. And I would like you to imagine, what if your writing life were a river? What would it look like? What is its shape? And feel free to start writing as you start getting ideas or images in your mind. Does it have bends and turns? Are they sharp or gradual? Are there boulders, rapids, waterfalls, or other features that represent important moments in your life or turning points? Are there times when your writing river flows strong or slows down to a trickle? After you've been writing for a few minutes, I also invite you to draw your river, including its bends and turns, rough spots and smooth flows. And you can mark it with important ages or dates along the way, or significant events symbolized by the natural features like boulders and waterfalls. And you can mark different segments of the river, showing stages of your writing life. We'll do this for a few moments. Set my timer for 3 minutes. Nobody is going to see this but you. So get as wild with it as you wish. I'm reading Anne's comment. Not as adept at drawing a picture as using words to create a picture. You're not alone there, Anne. Lean into whichever mode suits you best. Okay, we'll take about 15 more seconds. If you want to find your way to a good stopping point, we'll come back to this very soon. So let's talk a bit more about expressive writing. There are thousands of studies, and I'm not joking. I read that over 2,000 studies have been done mainly in psychology research about expressive writing. And they are pretty demonstrative that expressive writing can reduce the harmful impacts of stressful or even traumatic events. And some of these benefits include reduction of physical symptoms like chronic pain, um, doctor visits, and the improvement of overall physical health. If you want to learn about some of the specific physiological effects, check out some of the studies in the Works Cited page. They also lead to behavioral benefits. As you can see, they can improve your GPA. They improve re-employment prospects after job loss. They lead to reduction in work absenteeism. And they, most of all, have really beneficial psychological benefits and can reduce distress, stress, PTSD, and symptoms of depression. One of the most prominent researchers on expressive writing, you could call him the godfather of expressive writing. His name is James Pennebaker, and he's explained why expressive writing is so beneficial. He says that keeping thoughts or secrets or memories inside can be really toxic and can lead to rumination. He says that writing about them changes the way that they're organized in our brains, and that narrativizing our painful experiences gives them a new coherent meaning so that we can let go of them and put them down and move on with our lives. These findings are so interesting to me as a teacher of academic writing because for years I've been telling my students that reflective writing and brainstorming in a low stakes setting is a really important precursor to writing a polished formal draft of something, say, a research essay or something like that. I tell my students that they can't make sense of a big, huge, complicated topic by just writing about it once. and that they can actually develop new, more complex insights about something through several stages of what we call pre-writing in the biz. So it seems that this is the same is true for emotions. Reflective writing can help us organize and generate ideas, and it can help us organize and not be so controlled by our feelings. Another piece of the research on writing reveals something else really interesting, which is that handwriting or writing by hand can stimulate much richer thinking than typing. Thinking that leads to greater accuracy in spelling, in memory recall, and deeper conceptual understanding. So the other evening, I went to a reading being given by an author friend of mine. And during the Q&A, someone asked if he wrote in longhand. And he said he does. He writes all of his rough drafts by hand and with a fountain pen, no less. And he said he recommends that approach to all of his students. And the research, it seems, bears that out. But one thing he pointed out is that typing really enables you to be much more fussy with your writing. Do you notice this? It's easier to backspace and wordsmith, and you get sucked into this editing cycle right when you're trying to produce and generate ideas. But when you're writing by hand, you're just committed to what you say and what you get down on paper, and you're just forced to kind of progress and move through it more quickly. Even more strange to me and very interesting is some new research showing that using your non-dominant hand can activate the other hemisphere of your brain and help form new neural connections, which can facilitate better problem solving. According to researchers, you don't just have to write with your non-dominant hand, which is a relief to me because I find writing with my left hand pretty close to impossible. But even like brushing your teeth or eating food or doing other tasks with your non-dominant hand can light up your brain in new ways, which according to this research may lead to accelerated creativity, reduced symptoms of depression, and increased self-control. So how do we do it? And Hannah, I am seeing many chats popping up. So if there are any immediate questions, please interrupt me. I am not able to read them and talk at the same time.
Sounds good.
So how do we do it? There are so many examples of expressive writing. It's really not possible to name or even categorize them all, but I'm gonna offer a few examples today. First, I'm going to name some examples of personal expressive writing, which again is the kind of writing that can help you process emotions and contribute to personal well-being. And later, I'll talk a bit about writing for productivity. So one suggestion is doing a daily journal. And this can look many, many different ways. It can range from long form writing, or it can be as short and sweet as just listing 3 things you're grateful for at the end of the day. So gratitude writing exercises, as I just said. Another idea is targeted writing for solving a problem. So that researcher I mentioned, James Pennebaker, amused me by saying that he really does not enjoy expressive writing, in spite of making a whole career on researching it. And the thought of keeping a daily journal really is unappealing to him. So he only does reflective writing a few times a year when there's a particular knotty or thorny emotional problem he's trying to work through. There's also kind of other multimodal forms of writing combined with other kind of forms of creative expression that can be really helpful for processing difficult experiences. And this includes drawing or collage, photo essays, or found poetry. And so these have the benefit of helping you process your emotions while also indulging or satisfying an artistic instinct, if you have that within you. Anne, go ahead.
Sorry to be a pain. I'm so sorry. The problem-specific writing, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I think you can define it. again, I'm going to be really annoying by not offering you really specific, concrete examples. But my understanding is that if something is kind of plaguing you, in your work, say, or in your personal life, sitting down and spending some time just describing the problem and some of the reasons it keeps getting at you, what's coming up for you, as you're kind of thinking and ruminating about it, and then possibly speculating about some solutions. So that's my thought about what problem-specific writing might look like.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I have a few examples to show you just because it's nice to look at examples. Um, One is this illustrated blog that my sister-in-law, Erica Morse, put together. She came down with a really debilitating case of long COVID a few years ago. She's an artist, and she created these kind of comics about her experience. And I'm sharing them, of course, with permission from her. And she told me that doing this exercise and sharing it with the world really helped her process the trauma and the grief of this, lost year and a half. Another example is something called a joy jar. And this is something I do with my family every year. I got this idea from the New York Times a few years ago. We have this joy jar sitting on our kitchen counter, decorated by my son. And every time somebody in the family experiences joy, and when we remember to, we write it down on a piece of paper and slip the paper into the jar. And then after New Year's, we open the jar and pull out all the pieces of paper and read all of the slips aloud as a family. And it is just a wonderful bonding exercise for my family members. And it really concretizes and solidifies all the joyful experiences that we had and otherwise might forget about. So I really recommend that. Okay, so those were some personal expressive writing examples. I would like to invite us to come back to our river of writing exercise. So bringing back this writing and drawing that you've been doing, I'm going to ask you some new questions. And these include asking you about those who have supported you or influenced your writing identity. What relationships have most influenced your writing and maybe reading habits? Which groups or communities have supported you or not? What, if anything, would you like to tell these people or groups about your writing? As you write, again, please don't think too much. Don't stop and try and find the right word. It doesn't matter. You don't even need to write in straight lines. You can write within the river you've drawn or along the shore or create little puffy word clouds in the sky. Just keep adding to this river. And I'm going to set my timer for 4 minutes. So again, don't think too much, don't think too hard. Just an opportunity to reflect on who and what has shaped you as a writer in your life. Can be as visual as you want. No complete sentences required. Loving these comments too. Loving the opportunity to be able to go back and read all of these. Elaine writes that she can't get past charting because she was a bedside nurse for years. And I love this. It really kind of reinforces my the work that I do in my scholarship, which is that who we are in our professional fields is just absolutely integrally related to who we are as people and as writers. So Elaine has this writing practice that was born of her profession. Um, and that's okay. That's good. Okay, so let's bring it to a close for now. We'll come back one more time to this in just a few minutes. But first, I'm going to talk about some expressive writing ideas for productivity. So just a reminder, this is before we talked about expressive writing opportunities for personal reasons. And now I'll talk more about kind of fostering more productive approaches to writing, especially when we have to do it. So again, just a reminder, disclaimer, I'm not here to teach you how to write. You'll have to sign up for a different class with me for that. But rather to help cultivate some dispositions and habits that make the writing you need to do a little less difficult. So first, I think somebody mentioned a meditation practice in the chat, and I'm going to give a big thumbs up to that. That is really a part of the tip that I'm going to recommend now. So one thing you can and should do is to imagine your healthiest, most productive writing self. When you're sitting down to write something, especially something that you consider hard, try and spend 2 minutes and just sit there. Notice what emotions are arising in you related to the writing task before you. Do you feel dread? Do you feel anxiety? Do you feel like you failed before you've even started? Don't judge these emotions. Just notice them. Then imagine yourself writing really productively. I'm not saying you should just pretend or delude yourself that all of a sudden you're going to be the next Stephen King, who is famously, and let's admit it, irritatingly prolific. Rather, just conjure an image of yourself sitting at your desk, typing away, undistracted, and unbothered by hangups. You're creating this mental image of yourself just doing it. Another suggestion I have for you is to write 0 drafts, and you might even try doing them by hand. A 0 draft, if you haven't heard the term, is the draft that comes before the first draft. It comes even earlier than the shitty first draft, that phrase famously coined by Anne Lamott in her wonderful book on writing, Bird by Bird. I'm going to talk more at length about 0 drafts in the next slide. Another suggestion is that you just give yourself small chunks of time in which to write. Set your timer for 15 minutes. And if it's torturous the whole time, then you won't have to do it for very long. You can leave. But if the words start flowing, which they very well might in this low pressure setting, then you can keep going. And this is a good reason to clear your schedule beyond that initial 15 if you can. Also, at the end of a writing session, I recommend that you set yourself up for the next one. When the timer dings, do absolutely everything you can not to just slam your laptop closed in the middle of a sentence. And ask me how I know about that instinct. But rather just jot down a few notes for yourself about what you're in the middle of, what you hope to do next, what sources you need to consult, etc. Trust me, you will thank yourself for keeping the light on, so to speak. So the next time you sit down to get started, it won't be so painful. Okay, so a little more about zero drafts. That author friend I told you about, his name is Dan Tremaglio. And after his reading the other night, I emailed him to ask him if I could talk a little bit in my presentation today about his handwriting. And he wrote me this a lovely email giving me permission to share, and was talking about zero drafting. And I want to read you exactly what he wrote. He wrote, "Draft zero has become a big part of my process, and it is absolutely always handwritten. I call it zero because it is not even a first draft. I pretend I am starting on page -300 and writing backwards to zero. I give myself total permission to write shitty and wild. I don't even plan to reread it, though sometimes I still do. I tell myself I am just ruining paper. That's it. I am writing for the pleasure of writing with a fountain pen, and that is all. The boon is that I get to explore every stupid idea I have for a story, and thereby accidentally stumble upon at least one good one. I'm just telling myself the story, is another way to say it." And Dan even shared a photo of one of the zero draft for his novel, which was just published, by the way. And that is what's in this photo. So I'll add too that it might feel like zero drafts lend themselves mostly to fiction or creative writing, but I can definitely attest that they can really be helpful for nonfiction or academic writing as well, because they help solidify and record amorphous ideas that are swirling around in your head. I noticed that as I'm writing my own version of zero drafts, which, by the way, I have never done in fountain pen, I am able to make connections between sources or ideas that I never would have been able to think of just in my head alone. So we're coming up to the end here, but I wanted to add something. When I shared this presentation with my husband last night, he responded as a very, encouraging and supportive spouse by saying, "Who has time to write a zero draft? Who has time to waste with mindfulness meditations when they're on deadline?" And that's the thing that might seem at first counterintuitive about expressive writing practices. They might seem like time wasters, but their value is actually in the fact that they help dismantle these self-flagellating writing identities that can really debilitate our writing practice and cause us to put off writing tasks until the very last minute. Okay, with a show of hands, digital or physical, how many of you have had the experience of thinking to yourself, "I haven't even asked yet." You already know the answer is yes. Okay, so how many have thought to yourself, "God, if I'd only spent as much time actually writing the thing as I spent anxiously procrastinating about it, then this would be an award-winning piece of writing." Okay, there are more hands up than I can see than fit on my screen. 60 people raising their hands. Great. Okay, we all know what that's like. But let me tell you, nobody ever hated or chastised themselves into writing a great journal, article, or short story, or anything else. So by exploring some of these expressive writing practices, my hope is that you can think a bit more about who you are as a writer, and in so doing, give you a bit more control over your writing practice. Because that's exactly what it is. It's a practice, and it always will be. I also hope that it has opened your eyes to some possibilities for self-expression, self-exploration, and even healing. For a few more minutes, let's return to our rivers of writing for one last edition. For this last stage, I'd like you to imagine the next stretch of the river. Describe in words or in sketches your vision for your future writing life. What values and commitments will inform your writing practice from here on out? What would you like to take forward as you move along in your writing river? Where do you imagine that this writing river will take you next? And I didn't post this prompt on the slide, so I'll read it aloud one more time. What values and commitments will inform your writing practice from here on out? What would you like to take forward as you move along this writing river? Where do you imagine that this river will take you next? Jin Feng, I just read your comment. I love it. It's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, let's come to a stopping point. I would like to thank you all so much for your attention today and for participating gamely in this exercise. I wasn't sure how it would play out, but I really hope it has helped you get in touch with who you are as a writer. If we have time, I think we have about 12 more minutes. I'd love to hear about people's discoveries or insights about their writing identities, or take a question or two if they have any. The comments are flying, so I'm going to let Hannah navigate that and she can facilitate Q&A.
Yes, of course. And I see someone has their hand raised. Did you want to unmute and ask a question?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Um, First of all, you mentioned joy jar. What is in relation to? I mean, why a joy jar in the process of writing? And I just wanted to know that. I mean, what is it in context?
Right. How does that relate to writing? Great
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
It's an example of a really small and easy writing occasion that helps me remember the joyful moments of my life. Writing them down helps me remember them. It helps me share them again with my family, and that contributes to my well-being. So that's where
And
that example comes from.
okay, the second question I had, and this is the last question. You mentioned a title, Bird by Bird, is that it? Is it a
Yep.
writing journal?
It's in my in this slideshow, and also in the Google
Okay,
Doc that Hannah shared is a list of references. And Anne Lamott's book there, Bird by Bird, is in that list. I highly
thank
recommend
you.
it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, and if anyone doesn't want to raise their hand and unmute, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and I'm happy to relay them verbally. Okay, we have one. What are ways to figure out what to write about if you imagine a productive self and sit down but can't figure out what to write?
Oh, that's a great question. And I feel like this is a good question for a creative writing professor, which I am not. But I have some, I mean, I really recommend some wonderful books on writing. There's this great book called Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. And there are many prompts in that book that are just so inspiring and great for topic development. So once again, that is not on my reference list. So once again, that's Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. And also at the end on this slide, there's a URL to the Odegaard Writing and Research Center. One of the staff members there has created this great list of books on writing. And I recommend checking that out. There might be some inspiration in there. I know Bird by Bird is listed on there. So I'm sorry I don't have any specific prompts that come to mind. Check out Writing Down the Bones.
Right. Oh, we have some people with their hand raised. Go ahead, Kristen. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out again that Anne, it looks like she's suggesting a writing group. So if the people, I don't want that to get lost in the chat, like while we're all here and we're looking for writing support. Just want to call that out.
Awesome. Yes,
Thank
thank you,
you. Can
Anne.
I respond to that? Thank you so much for that point, Anne, and thank you for the invitation. You know, as director of writing here on campus, I have been thinking about forming faculty writing circles, like creating time and space for people to show up and do writing, just really kind of unstructured accountability time. And it doesn't have to just be faculty, it could also be staff. So if that interests you, feel free to shoot me an email. I would be happy to start thinking about how to set that up. And of course, my email is not on this slide. Let me get back to a slide that has my email on it.
Awesome. And Megan, I can also send your email in the follow-up
Oh, good.
email
Thanks.
from this that will include the slides. And then I know someone was asking for the script that will also be in the follow-up email.
Super. I'll type my email in the chat too.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Molly, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Megan. I wanted to share that. So in the past 5 years, I've gone through an aggressive cancer 2 times between 2019 and now.
Oh,
And
wow.
I found that writing not only brought me peace, but I was able to record something and then look at it later. Because sometimes when you're going through something in your writing, because I did a lot of writing, I had personal journals. I would do something called Caring Bridge. And I would write to inform everybody what was happening with me so that they didn't have to call or email or text.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it's created a journal, and I can actually take my Caring Bridge and turn it into a book. And my oncologist actually suggested that I do that. So sometimes you don't realize that what you write can actually help other people. And it's kind of turned into a whole thing. I've been doing speeches for the American Cancer Society, and last year I was on the news talking about it. So it can really spark something for a girl who used to pretend to faint before oral communications class. And then also I noticed someone mentioned Toastmasters, and that's a really great way to form your creative writing. So Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing about your personal experience, and I hope your health is okay. And I'm grateful for these ideas.
Oh, thank you.
Toastmasters is I haven't taken it, but my understanding is that it's a course and supportive community on supporting public speaking.
Yeah,
And
it's a public speaking, but it's not necessarily a course.
oh,
There's
okay.
clubs everywhere and competitions in
Oh,
public
neat.
speaking, and it's been a great experience. So
Great.
yeah.
Pretending to faint. I'll
Oh
remember
yeah,
that strategy.
I
I should
did
have done
that.
that before today because I was.
You did great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Megan, the next question I wanted to ask, a couple people in the chat have been interested in taking your classes or any other webinars. Do you have any resources or content to give people?
Well, as I said, normally I teach undergrads, so you might have to figure out how to enroll in an undergrad composition course to take one of my courses. But I am happy to come back to the whole U if Hannah wants me back.
Of course.
And I'm happy to think about other ways for us to connect. So, but yeah, primarily I teach undergrad courses. So we'll have to think about that.
Yes, and faculty and staff, or I know staff for sure, can apply to the UW and get classes at a prorated rate. That's not my area of expertise, but I've definitely tabled next to the person that knows about it. So if you're interested, I can connect you. You can just email me. All right. Why don't I'm gonna do another question from the chat and then we can do the hands. Sorry. Any advice on convincing bosses that slowing down and going through this process will improve results?
Well, you could share some of some research on the fact that anxiety and really unreasonable deadlines and expectations will create conditions that are not conducive to good writing or even on-time writing. That can feel a little, not everybody has the kind of space or safety to do that with their bosses. It can feel risky. So, yeah, that's a really tough one. But I am really a passionate believer, having done this for many years, that treating writing as a process and as an iterative, kind of staged process is hands down the best way to be the most productive. So, creating space for yourself whenever and wherever possible. So, one idea actually is to ask your employer to give you deadlines as early as possible and then help scaffold them, so that, and this is what I do in my own classes, is I hate when professors ask their students, they just say, okay, your 20-page research paper is due on the last day of the quarter, and then they never ever talk about it again. I mean, nobody, is born with the time management skills to kind of chunk it out over time. So inviting your employer to help you kind of scaffold might be a really helpful way. And then you're not responsible for kind of putting those deadlines, those stages onto yourself. But rather having it kind of being handed down to you, which can hold you accountable.
All right. And Judy, do you want to unmute and bring us home?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Judy. How are you? So good to see you. How are you?
Really fun workshop. I
Thank
have a
you.
question. So in my river of life, it was like, oh, I had these great writing teachers in elementary school, which is like founded so much love of writing. And then high school started to get harder. And then college was like a dam, like I couldn't write. And then I'd have to pull all-nighters for every paper as an undergrad. But I stuck with it. And, got through grad school. I still enjoy writing. My question for you as someone who teaches with lots of undergrads is like, is that pretty normal? Is there like just a huge problem with academic writing that it's just so, it wasn't good for my mental health to pull those all-nighters. Obviously like having more process, but that was with also teachers who I'm still in touch with who are very committed mentors, academic mentors. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious if you could put that in perspective of like developmentally and academically, like what your thoughts are about that.
Yes. Thank you so much for your question. I see it's 1 o'clock, so I'm going to give the super quick response, which is that yes, unfortunately, college can really kill writing for a lot of people, and it's really sad. And it's kind of my mission in life to work against that. I think a lot of it has to do with professors' own kind of limited histories with and identities with writing. And so my mission as a faculty developer is to help people kind of explore those identities and open them up as much as possible so that they can share that with their students as much as possible. But yes, it's true. It's sad.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Megan, for taking your time to do this webinar. It was awesome. Lots of great chatting and in the chat, and I'll definitely save it so people can have access to those resources. Maybe I'll put it in the doc and send it out with everyone because there was a lot of great recommendations as well.
In the written chat?
Yes.
I would love to read through that more carefully. I wasn't able to really read it, so I would love to read through it later.
Oh, awesome. I'll send it to you as well.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was really wonderful to have you, and thank you for taking time out today.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Save the chats. I'm just making sure I save the chat. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm going to run to my 1 o'clock. See you
Okay.
later. Bye-bye.
Bye.